Does anybody know what this power tool is? Does anybody know? It looks like a drill. It looks like a drill. It's actually a driver. It's a driver, okay? Now, a driver is different from a drill. A driver has one and only one purpose. The purpose of a driver is to drive a screw into a wall or into the floor or into a board, right? So it's got this little bit right here, and this bit is set up for a screw. You put that in the back of a screw, and then put the screw there, and you go, and it just, you know, you don't have to use a screwdriver going like this the whole time. It just screws it right in. This is a driver. And that is the exclusive purpose for which this driver is dedicated. And this is my driver, by the way, just so you know. This is my driver in my house, my driver. Now, I have observed a few times where some individuals in my home who shall remain unnamed. We have a creative bunch in my house. People like to make things, build things, unbuild things, do stuff. They like to do stuff. So I have observed some people using my driver for purposes outside of their exclusive purpose, of its exclusive dedicated purpose. I saw one person take this driver and use it to pound a nail in the wall. I saw that. I thought, that's not what that's for, you know? I saw another person, and they didn't know, took this bit out, put a drill bit in, and tried to drill a hole. Well, this is not a drill. It's not going to drill a hole. It doesn't work that way, right? But they didn't know what it was for. I saw another person, a younger person in the house, trying to pry the lid off of a paint can with this driver. So I had to have a family meeting about the driver and say, hey, everybody. This driver is for an exclusively dedicated purpose. Can I submit to you that your life is like this driver? God has some exclusively dedicated purposes for your life. The problem is if you use a driver for a purpose other than that for which it was made, you can damage the driver. You can diminish the effectiveness of the driver. If you use your heart, soul, mind, and body for things other than that for which you were designed as followers of Jesus, you will diminish your effectiveness. You will dampen your witness. You will damage your life. God is saying to us, he's saying devoted means that there are certain things that we avoid. In fact, let me put it like this. Devotion requires subtraction. Devotion requires, in other words, what you don't do as a devoted follower of Jesus can be as important as what you do as a follower of Jesus. What you don't do. Let me give you an example. If a friend of yours came to you and said, man, I am so devoted to health and fitness that I go to the gym every single day. I go to the gym every day, every morning I go to the gym. You might go, wow, that's devotion. That is devotion. But then if they said, and also every night I come home and I eat an entire tub of ice cream and a bag of Doritos, you would go, that doesn't feel like devotion to health and fitness, right? Because it's not just about what you do, it's also about what you don't do. It's not just about addition, it's also about subtraction. So my question for us, church family, as we're leaning into this series, as we're pursuing the essential elements of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, my question for you today is, what activities are interfering with your devotion? You don't have to say them out loud. Just think of them. What activities are interfering? What activities in your life are interfering? I'll start, because I'll just tell you, this will help you. At one point, several months ago, I discovered that my phone was interfering with my devotion. It was interfering with not because there was anything bad about the phone or bad about what I was doing on the phone, but a lot of times you have to eliminate even good things to get to the better thing. Are y'all with me? What I was finding is that, I was reading all the news, and I was jumping on YouTube, and I was watching some videos, and there was Instagram, and then there was all kinds of stuff, right? And what I discovered at a certain point was, this is interfering with my devotion. It's not that it's bad in and of itself, but it's not as good as what I could be if I were pursuing single-mindedly, exclusively, the purposes of God. And so my first thought was, I turned to my wife. This is back in, I don't know, it was like December. I turned to Rebecca and I go, hey, I think I'm going to get a flip phone. I'm going all in. I'm getting a flip phone, y'all. And my wife was like, what about maps? And I was like, well, that's a good point. She goes, what about the calculator? Well, I do kind of need that. Anyway, so she talked me out of the flip phone. But But what I did is then I turned to my sons, Jameson and Lincoln. And I said, Jameson and Lincoln, I said, I need your help with my phone. And they said, what do you need? I said, well, you know what I've done to your phone, right? So what I've done to their phones, they both have phones. But there's an internal control setting that I have access to that they don't have access to. And so I go into that internal control setting and I shut off Safari and YouTube and Instagram, and there's no social media and there's no internet, right? They've got phone, they got call, text, calculator, map, weather, and a couple other apps that I graciously bestow upon them. That's it. That's all they got, okay? And I said, I want you to do to my phone what I did to your phone. They were like, really? They're like, here we go. So now they have the internal controls of my phone, and I don't have it because I wanted to get something out of my life. So now they shut off all my internet, social media, YouTube, all of that. Now I have text, call, map, calculator. I just have a few apps. I was like, I do need dictionary.com, please, thesaurus.com, biblehub.com, and biblegateway.com. Could I just have those 4 web? So now I have those 4 web. But what I needed to do was I needed to eliminate some activities that were interfering with my devotion. The question, the real question, the question is more important than this is, what are you willing to eliminate in order to elevate? What are you willing to let go out of your life in order to pursue the thing that God has for you? What are you willing to subtract, right? If you want to move, if we, church, want to move from ordinary to extraordinary, if we want to go from mundane to miraculous, if we want to fulfill the divine potential that God has placed on our lives, that means there's some stuff that we got to extract and subtract and eliminate from our lives. What are you willing to eliminate in order to elevate? That's part 1, exclusive dedication. Part two of the definition of devoted, part 2 of the definition is active engagement. Active engagement. Now, let me come back to the driver. If I told my family, hey, nobody's allowed to use this driver for any purposes other than driving screws, right? But then I didn't use it to drive screws, then even though I say this is devoted to driving screws, it's really not, because I'm not actively engaged in driving screws, right? This driver would not fulfill its potential as a driver, its design as a driver, because it's not being actively engaged in the purpose for which it was designed. What does that mean? What that means is daily devotion. Devotion is a daily activity, not a one-time decision, not a one-time choice. Devotion is an ongoing process. It's active engagement. It's not just, I'm going to stop doing that. It's that I'm going to actively pursue this. I'm going to actively pursue those core essential elements of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Let me illustrate this. Rebecca and I have been married 17 years. 17 years we've been married. And if on Mother's Day, yeah, thank you, my brother, thank you. If on Mother's Day, my wife comes to me and she says, Brent, do you love me? And if I were to say to her, didn't I tell you I loved you on our wedding day 17 years ago? If I were to say, if I change my mind, I'll let you know. If I were to say that, it might be a while till you saw me again, y'all. I might be in trouble. It wouldn't be good, right? Why? Because devotion is not something you do one time. Devotion is something that you do every day. Devotion is a demonstration of your love and affection and care every single day. It's a daily activity, not a one-time choice. When the disciples of Jesus, when that 3,000 members of the early church devoted themselves, what we know is that they devoted themselves daily to those activities. How do you know that, Pastor Brent? Well, let me show you how I know it. Because Acts chapter 2, verse 46 says, every day, they continued to meet together in the temple court. Every day. They would get together and they would pray and they would read together and they would praise God together. And they studied the scripture. They broke bread in their homes. They got in life groups. They started spending time together. It was there every day. They didn't just come on Sunday and go, we're devoted to God. No, it was a daily activity. They were into it every single day. And they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. Question number 2 for you is this. What are your daily disciplines of devotion? We as a church, what are we committed to? What are we devoted to in terms of not just what we're avoiding, but what we're actively engaging? What are we actively pursuing? One of the greatest basketball players of all time was the late, great, everybody knows, Kobe Bryant. One of the greatest basketball players of all time. Absolutely dominant for 20 years in the NBA. Dominant. 18 years in a row, he got nominated and selected for the All-Star team. That's a record. Nobody's ever had that many times in a row. 18 times in a row. His last game, after 20 years in the league, he scored 60 points on his last game. I mean, it just, like, that has never happened. That never happened, somebody his age to score 60 points, right? He won 5 NBA championships. This guy was amazing, right? Absolutely dominant. And everybody would always try to figure out what makes Kobe Bryant so dominant, right? I mean, is it athleticism, his natural skills, natural ability? There was a writer, a guy named Alan Stein, that wrote he was from New York, and he called up Kobe Bryant. He said, I want to unpack what is the greatness of Kobe Bryant. I want to understand what it is. Can I come out and spend a week with you? And Kobe said, yeah, you can come out and you can spend a week. So Alan Stein flies out to LA, and he shows up and he says to Kobe, he goes, okay, first thing I want to do is I want to go to your basketball. I know you practice basketball every day. So I want to show up to basketball practice. And Kobe says, sure, you can come to my practice. He said, I'm there at 4 o'clock. And Alan was looking at the schedule, and he goes, oh, it looks like you have like a media thing at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And Kobe goes, no, I'm talking about 4 o'clock in the morning. And Alan's like, oh, okay. Okay, that's what we're doing. So Alan gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning, goes over to the gym because he wants to impress Kobe by how early he's there. He said, by the time I got to the gym, Kobe had already worked up a sweat. He said, so I sat down and I thought, okay, let me try to study what this guy does to make him so dominant. And what he wrote, he said, it was the most boring workout I have ever seen. He goes, I couldn't believe how boring it was. Kobe Bryant was doing things that my kindergartner can do. He was practicing layups. He was practicing dribbles. He was practicing rebounds. He was practicing free throws. It was like the most rudimentary, boring practice ever. And it went on for 2 hours. And so Alan Stein comes over to Kobe after the practice, and he's scratching his head. He goes, is that the way you normally do it? And Kobe's like, yeah. He goes, why was it so basic? Why was it so rudimentary? Kobe Bryant said something that I just think is fascinating. I think it's important for our spiritual life. Here's what Kobe said. He said, the reason I'm the best player in the world is that I've never gotten bored with the basics. He said, I run the drills every day because there are some essential elements that are required for me to succeed and excel as a basketball player. I'm not practicing dunks if I haven't been practicing dribbles. Come on, church. Some of us need to just run the fundamentals, the apostles' teaching and fellowship and the breaking of bread and of prayer. And when we do that, when we don't get bored with the basics, man, our life begins to grow.